Hey everyone, this is N, back with another video. So this might be a surprise, but I really enjoy Godzilla movies. With Godzilla vs. Kong coming out later this year, I thought it'd be fun to do a review of the original King Kong vs. Godzilla. So buckle your seats, kiddos, you're in for a ride. So, the year is 1955. You just walked out of the theater after seeing Godzilla Raids Again, and you think, "Gosh, gee, golly, sir, that was really good. That was one neat picturama. I can't wait to see the next movie." Well, sorry, kid, you gotta wait 7 years. Unless you're born in the future like me, and you have the whole set right here. For those of you who haven't seen the movie, whoo boy, you're in for a ride. What doesn't this movie have? You have suspense.
No, don't! Stop! Stop, I'm convinced!
Wouldn't be an old film without cigarettes.
You better not smoke it around home.
And last but not least, jaw-dropping fight scenes between two giant monsters. Heck yeah. That's what I'm talking about. So grab your popcorn and sody pop, kids. We're going on a journey through King Kong vs. Godzilla. Also, I should just mention that I've seen both the Japanese cut and the US cut, but for this video, we are mainly talking about the US cut. Mostly because of this.
The corns. I don't want to hear about your corns.
Let's get on to the show. So the movie starts off with us meeting Eric Carter, a news reporter. He mentions that a Japanese fleet has been finding clumps of ice floating around in the ocean. So they sent out a submarine to investigate. And now if you hadn't seen Godzilla Raids Again, which is the movie before this, at the end of the movie, Godzilla is sort of frozen in an iceberg. So yeah, finding clumps of ice isn't a good sign. In the following scene, we're in the middle of a meeting. A company called Pacific Pharma has found a new berry on some remote island. There are rumors that a giant monster lives on this island and mainly eats those berries. For whatever reason, Pacific Pharma is involved in the TV industry and wants to find this creature for a new TV segment. During this meeting, we meet Sakurai and Furue, or as this movie likes to call him, Furu. Later that night, Sakurai heads home and ends up having dinner with his sister and her boyfriend. Now, her boyfriend is an inventor/military guy. Anyway, he made a string that's stronger than steel, and he just had to demonstrate. Now, could he have gotten a pair of scissors and just tried to cut it? Sure. Could he, I don't know, maybe tried to stretch the string? Yeah. But no, instead he just decides to jump out the window. Back to the submarine, it's investigating the ice in a very suspicious iceberg. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but icebergs shouldn't be lighting up. Either it's Godzilla or someone's having a one-man rave. So the sub moves closer, and for some reason it starts taking in water and catches fire. Yeah, fire too for some reason. So they're pretty much dead. A short while later, a helicopter comes to search for the sub, and it's gone. And hey, it was Godzilla in the iceberg! So since Godzilla's up from his nap, he decides to head for Japan, like always, of course, and destroys things along the way. So Sakurai and Furu finally reach the mysterious island, which does have a name, and it's Faro Island. But when they get there, the village chief says they have to leave. Sakurai decides the best way to win them over is with gifts. So he gives them a radio and calls it magic. And magic it is.
Like this, and you get 'em my magic.
He also gives them the greatest gift of all. Nicotine addiction.
They satisfy.
Back in Japan, the string guy was apparently on a ship and it was lost at sea, so Sakurai's sister decides to head to where he was last seen. It's just her luck though, that's where Godzilla is also heading. Back on the island, Sakurai and Furu are also on the hunt for the monster. Their first date doesn't end too well, so they head back and rest. While they're resting, a giant octopus attacks the village. And while they're fighting it off, a certain monster decides to finally show up. So King Kong decides to lay down the law of the land and fight off the octopus. King Kong scares it away and decides to celebrate by cracking open a few cold ones. Turns out these berries are like NyQuil for him. While King Kong is passed out, they strap him on a raft with dynamite. Of course, they're stopped by the government because, yeah, the last thing Japan needs is another monster running around. While out in the water, King Kong wakes up and in a panic, they light up the dynamite. King Kong miraculously survives and swims to Japan. With King Kong and Godzilla both on land, it's inevitable that they cross paths. King Kong does the Toho signature move, Rock Throw, but it proves to be ineffective. Godzilla ends up using his atomic breath on King Kong and it leaves a burn mark on his chest. Seriously, King Kong is just standing there with a face that just says, okay, screw this, I'm out. So King Kong sort of just nopes out of there, and that's the last we hear about him for a while. The military still has to deal with Godzilla, so they devise a plan to take care of him. They take a page out of the old Wile E. Coyote book and dig a giant hole and fill it with explosives. Surprisingly, Godzilla ends up falling in the hole, and the explosives, they do nothing. The military has to go back to the drawing board, and as a stopgap, their plan is to put electrified wires, and they're surprisingly effective. All the while, King Kong decides to join in on the action, and much like a squirrel on a power line, he has to take a nibble, except this actually powers him up. So powered up, King Kong starts wreaking havoc and ends up stealing a girl from a train. And that girl just happens to be Sakurai's sister. How convenient. So King Kong does what King Kong does and crawls on the tallest building. It just happens that the tallest building around, it isn't very tall. Thankfully, the military, Sakurai, and Furu are there, and they can't attack King Kong because he has a hostage, so Sakurai recalls King Kong drinking his berry drink and having a lullaby. So the government arms missiles with berry juice, and he goes night-night. The military decides they should still use King Kong against Godzilla, and oh yeah, String Guy is there, so they tie up King Kong and strap him to a helicopter. I could draw this scene, but it's just so funny I have to show you the clip. And every time the poor guy falls asleep, he wakes up in some nightmare. So King Kong is dropped off for his playdate, and at this point I think he's tired of everything because he starts going hard. He sneaks around a few times and grabs Godzilla by the tail, throws some classic Toho rocks, and does a sweet somersault, only to hit his head on a rock and pass out. Talk about an unlucky day. Godzilla starts wailing on him with his tail for a bit, and King Kong wakes up and does a tail grab, and they go back at it again. Godzilla does what I could only describe as a Mortal Kombat style kick that sends King Kong flying, and he's knocked out again. So while King Kong is being beaten up by Godzilla, a lightning storm appears, and
what were you the god of again?
boom! Out of nowhere, a lightning bolt hits King Kong. We now have a supercharged King Kong dealing out lightning slaps. Pretty much if you were a kid and rubbed your socks on the carpet to shock someone. Except more deadly! So there's not much to report on except that they're just going at it. You have this iconic scene, and eventually they end up at Atami Castle and still try to fight, but looks more like they're taking out their frustration on the building. I've been there, buddy. King Kong slowly goes in for a tackle and the two monsters fall off a cliff into the ocean. Our human cast looks off to the sea and King Kong is seen swimming away with Godzilla nowhere to be seen. And that's the end of the movie. King Kong versus Godzilla. I will note, in the Japanese version, at the end, you can hear Godzilla's roar and King Kong's roar. But in the American cut, you only hear King Kong's. So there's that. Overall, it's a pretty fun movie. I had to rewatch this movie a couple times while making this video, and there were still moments I'd end up watching instead of working. So this one's up there with one of my favorite Godzilla movies. I don't think you're missing out too much if you watch the US version. For my back-to-back watch, the Japanese cut flows better because the order of the scenes is different and the soundtrack is classic Godzilla. But the US has its charm in its own way. If the video isn't enough to satisfy your Godzilla craving, thankfully the releases of this movie are fairly cheap if you're in America. Also, the Japanese cut is on the Criterion Collection, but it's on the 8th disc, if you have it, because I didn't know and then I had to Google it. But then again, I'm kind of dumb. But yeah, I hope you guys liked the video. This one took a bit of time to make, so there might be a gap between the next review type video. I'll be back soon, so I hope you're there for the next video. Alright, bye guys, have a good day everyone.